The topic is intriguing and the education is actionable. And so this is going to be very, very helpful if you have to race in heat. And let me tell you, the vast majority of races are in heat. Now, me, as a professional athlete, well, I was on the heavier side, let's call it. 6'2", about 185 pounds when I raced. I was what might be known as a big unit of an athlete, and I did not like heat. But I couldn't allow that to be an excuse. In fact, I want you to eradicate that mindset. I'm not good in heat, because I am, you are empowered to do something about it. There is a case that people are genetically better and more equipped to operate well in heat, lucky for them, but many people are not. But that doesn't mean we can't do anything about it. In fact, it's a growth mindset opportunity. We're not good in heat yet, but we can become better. And that's what today is about, ensuring that we set up a smart approach for you to be successful. But before we dive into the action and what we can actually do about it, let's first rip apart why heat and humidity are such a double whammy, such a challenge. I want to try and simplify the why behind heat-related performance decline. And I want to make sure that it's in pretty relatable, really easy to grasp terms. It starts with core temperature and blood volume. There is a big internal battle going on here. When we exercise, when we train, if you're a triathlete, swim, bike and run, in order for us to generate the energy to do work, one of the byproducts is heat. We generate heat from the inside out, and that's going to raise our core temperature. The body is a master of managing our internal temperature, and so what it does as we exercise, and much like an oven being turned on, it begins to heat up, the body dissipates that heat. The primary way it dissipates heat is through the skin. And so blood rushes to the skin and we get rid of that heat. And that prevents from some really bad things happening to our brain and organs. It becomes more challenging to dissipate that heat if you've got high temperatures outside, and even more if you have humidity. Because one of the major sources of heat dissipation is evaporation. In other words, sweat evaporating from the skin. But if there's already a lot of moisture in the air, the body's less effective of doing it. So we have two things going on in heat. Firstly, the body is less effective as a cooling machine. It's not as good at getting rid of the heat. Secondly, we've got an external heat source, sun and radiant heat coming onto our skin. So therefore, things become a greater challenge. But what's going on inside? Well, here's the key concept that's very, very important for us to understand, because it informs what's happening to our body, what the challenges is, and some of the strategies that we want to try and deploy. We are desperate to offload this heat. And the vehicle to do that is our blood. Our blood is made up of two main components. Firstly, our red blood cells, and red blood cells carry our oxygen to our muscles so that we can generate heat, and also gets rid of those byproducts, carbon dioxide and other things, and we remove those out of our breathing. Okay, so that's one vehicle. That's our red blood cells, about 45% of our total blood volume. The rest of it is our plasma, and our plasma is really our body water. Alrighty, what's happening in the body here is that we have an ongoing three-way tug-of-war between our blood. Because the muscles need oxygen, so that's blood is shunting to the muscles. The skin needs to offload that heat that is being generated, so blood needs to go to the skin to offload that. And the gut needs help digesting the calories and the fluids that we're consuming to keep our exercise or our racing going. So you've got three things going on here. Alrighty? When it's hot, we're generating more heat, and we have an external heat source. This battle becomes particularly important. And here's the fact. Between muscle, skin, and the gut, the skin will always win. Alrighty? The skin will always win. And that means that performance is going to suffer if you're not prepared. Because if we are shunting more and more of a ratio of our blood to the skin to try and offload this heat, and it's less effective because of the high heat and high temperatures as well as the high humidity. We have less blood to go around towards our muscles, so for energy potential delivery, our muscles are oxygen going to there, and our gut to actually absorb the calories that we need to fuel our exercise and our racing. So the first thing that actually dissipates here is our gut. And that's why absorbing calories in hot conditions tends to be a little bit more challenging than in cooler conditions, because we've got so much blood going to the skin. And of course, we want to try and maintain going to the muscle because we're looking for that effort. So that's it. So it's really challenging. So this sort of three-way tug of war, the best sort of analogy that I can give you, it's a little bit like trying to run a house that's on half the power supply. So the house is demanding 150 amps of power supply and you're only giving it 100 amps. It's really challenging. There's one other important element that we want to think about this competition. We talked about red blood cells, we talked about plasma volume. That plasma is your body water. What starts to occur as another factor in this in heat is hydration. Because as we get dehydrated, what starts to occur is that plasma volume starts to shrink because our body water. So imagine myself, and I have 6 liters of blood, hopefully in a closed system going around, pumping from my heart, delivering oxygen, going to the skin, a little bit to the gut, returning back to the lungs, dissipating out the CO2 and other items, uploading my oxygen back to the pump, round and around and around. I've got 6 liters. Imagine if I'm racing and I'm not doing a good job of hydration. Now maybe I've got 5 3/4 liters, maybe I've got 5.5 liters of total blood volume. In other words, I've got less blood in my blood. So therefore, the tug of war gets amplified. It becomes more challenging. But remember, the skin always wins. And so this is one of the reasons that dehydration is such a factor in performance. Because if the skin is always going to win, what we start to have over time and duration of events in heat is an increase in perceived effort, a decrease in your total economy and efficiency as an athlete, and you start to ultimately have a lower ability to generate pace, power, etc. And so hydration is a key factor in this because we care about blood volume.